Welcome to the Michael Rivero What Really Happened radio program.
And welcome to our show today. It is Monday, April 12th, 2021, start of a brand new week of mayhem and confusion and chaos and potential war all over the planet here. And we've got a lot to talk about today. It's been a very busy news day, a very busy news weekend, a lot of stuff going on. So as usual, we're going to do news until we run out of news. Then we're going to open up the phone lines for your comments, questions, observations, and opinions. And we may be a little late getting to the phone lines today because all we have to talk about. Meanwhile, Mike is in our control room, twiddling the dials, keeping us out of trouble, and ready to answer the phone when you call on in. Today also happens to be the 60th anniversary of the flight of Yuri Gagarin, who was the first human being to make it into orbit and basically made one orbit just a few months before Alan Shepard became the first American in space. And of course, there have always been a few rumors that the Soviet Union had tried orbiting some cosmonauts before Yuri that didn't quite make it back. But Yuri Gagarin completed the trip and he came on back. Also today, 40 years ago, John Young and Bob Crippen lifted off aboard Columbia in the first flight of the space shuttle. And if you think about the amazing progress that took place in just those 20 years, from that Vostok to the shuttle, and it's really quite mind-boggling to think about here. All right, let's get into the political news. There's a lot going on there. Top Republican John Thune is saying that only 6% of Biden's infrastructure bill is actually about infrastructure. And Transport Secretary Pete Buttigieg refuses to rule out adding in a path to citizenship for Dreamers in that package. So they're already starting to load this up with all kinds of goodies here. Interestingly enough, Chris Wallace was interviewing Pete Buttigieg over the claim that the Biden infrastructure plan would create 19 million new jobs. The actual figure is 2.7 million, which is great for those 2.7 million, but we still have a lot of unemployed Americans. So Fox News host Chris Wallace asked Biden's transportation secretary why he misled folks by claiming the number was more than 16 million higher than what is now being reported. And Buttigieg admitted, "You're right, I should have been more precise." In other words, he got caught lying to you, the American people, yet again. Now, Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm came out with a very weird comment over the weekend about the infrastructure bill, saying that the Biden administration will no longer use past definitions of infrastructure when allocating trillions of dollars for his new spending spree of taxpayer dollars, all of which is borrowed at interest that you are expected to pay back. Now, historically, infrastructure are those things that make the economy move: the roads, the rails, the bridges, the airports, the harbors. And but what Granholm is saying is there's going to be a new definition, which seems to indicate that the bill really isn't about infrastructure as we have come to think about it, but it's more liberal pork barrel spending. Fox News contributor and the Hill opinion columnist Joe Concha is arguing that President Biden, his fraudulency, Biden's Supreme Court commission, is all window dressing, saying that the conclusion of adding new justices to the court is a foregone conclusion. And Joe Concha said, let's report the facts here. The co-chairs of the commission, one is Christina Rodriguez. She was in the Obama Justice Department. Another co-chair is Bob Bauer. He was part of Obama's White House counsel. And that's the Obama-Biden administration, by the way. And so he's saying, yes, it's basically going to come up. And it's as fake as professional wrestling. They're going to rule that, yes, it's okay for Biden to enlarge the court and pack it with liberal justices. And you need to remember, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg herself said no more than 9 justices were needed for the court to function properly. Now, Senator John Kennedy is out there saying the wokers are trying to pack the Supreme Court to allow them to rewrite the Constitution without a vote. That if they add more justices to the Supreme Court, they're all going to be liberal activist judges who will rewrite the Constitution without, to get things that they could never get through the voting system, even as rigged as it is. And that means the Second Amendment's going to get gutted. First Amendment's going to be gutted. Fourth Amendment is all but gone already. Fifth Amendment is in the crosshairs. Now, the Washington Post over the weekend said that as part of this court packing program, that maybe it's time to consider term limits for the Supreme Court justices. And this has been an idea that's been around for quite some time as we watch some of these Supreme Court justices continue writing opinions long past when their mental faculties are at their sharpest. And we just have to wait for them to either voluntarily retire or to pass away, as happened with Justices Scalia and Ginsburg. Story coming on out of Blabber Buzz. Back during the run-up to the 2020 election, Hunter Biden's laptop was declared fake news. It's Russian propaganda. It's conspiracy theory. There's nothing there at all. And now the media is starting to take Hunter Biden's laptop seriously. Cyber forensic experts from Merriman and Associates were commissioned to examine the laptop's content of text messages, emails, photos, and videos, and basically said this all appears to be quite authentic, and the corporate media is reporting it. Why are they doing that now? Well, according to a story coming out of townhall.com, this is the elites sending a message to us peasants that the elites can get away with this kind of stuff, that they can do drugs, that they can make their own porn videos with prostitutes, that they can have sex with underage girls, they can make corrupt deals with China and Ukraine, and nothing will happen to them because they are above the law. And that's why Hunter Biden's laptop is now being made public, to sort of rub that fact in our nose that there's really not much we can do about the corruption that is rotting the nation's capital. And getting on to election fraud here, story from the Gateway Pundit. The National Democratic Machine is in a total panic over the Arizona Senate's Maricopa County ballot audit. And last week, the Democrats sent in national fixer attorney Mark Elias' firm Perkins Cole to throw around threats to make the audit go away. And the stakes are astronomical because if fraud is in fact confirmed in Maricopa County, you're going to see just a huge call for a full audit all across the entire United States of America. Now, Steve Bannon of the War Room basically interviewed Peter Navarro, who wrote an incredible 3-part analysis explaining how the 2020 election was stolen. The Navarro Report and Mike Lindell, who has produced 2 documentaries about the 2020 election steal, have repeatedly stated that if just one of these swing states fall, they will fall like a house of cards. And they're absolutely right. And that's why every time you see any progress being made to verify the vote, the Democrats rush on in and spend no end of money and threats and violence trying to prevent it from happening. And I would not be surprised if the warehouse holding all those Maricopa ballots were to mysteriously burn down in the middle of the night. That's how scared the Democrats are. Over in Nevada, Joe Biden won the 2020 election by 34,000 votes. And there was much more corruption included in those numbers than the winning margin. And yesterday, the Nevada Secretary of State was censured for her role in the corrupt 2020 election results. Now, one of the things that has come on out from Georgia is that there were more votes cast in the 2020 election than there are residents in the state of Georgia. So something funny is going on there. Now, after the most corrupt and crooked election in history, the CEO of Apple, Tim Cook, is out there pushing the idea that people need to vote in future elections from their cell phones. And he thinks this would be a really good idea. And obviously, with all the hacking going on out there, I disagree. I think we need to go back to paper ballots and in-person voting with ID. And the more computerized the elections become, the easier it is for them to be manipulated and stolen to keep the liberal Marxists in power here. Now, this is a very interesting story because CEOs from several 100 top corporations have joined a call this weekend to discuss putting pressure on states that propose changes in the voting laws, such as requiring voter IDs. And they were focused at the recent Georgia voting law signed by Governor Kemp that requires voters to show a photo ID. And all of a sudden, all these CEOs are leaping in to say, no, 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 this is a bad idea. Now, who has the kind of juice it takes to get these very wealthy, independently minded CEOs to all march in goose step to say we have to have elections that are easy to steal by not requiring voter ID? And I think the only entity with that kind of influence over the entire nation is the Central Intelligence Agency. You know, more and more that we see about how much political clout is being wielded to try and keep the lid on the 2020 fraud, the more and more it looks like a major intelligence organization has to be behind it all. Meanwhile, getting on back to MyPillow CEO Mike Lindell, he has launched his own investigation into Fox News for Fox News' refusal to let him report on election fraud allegations. And he says he's hired private investigators. He's spending a lot of money to conduct the investigation. He's saying, why is Facebook involved? Why is Wikipedia involved? And then the big question, why was Fox News, formerly considered a conservative bastion, not allowing people on to ask some very legitimate questions about the election fraud? Okay. Story coming out of Investment Watch blog, Jake Tapper apparently had a meltdown when he was pushed on why CNN isn't leaving Georgia because of the election law. Now, CNN has come down hard on Georgia for requiring voter ID, but CNN is located right there in Atlanta, and I guess they're not upset enough to consider moving CNN to another location in the country. Getting into other areas, the claim that there was an insurrection at the Capitol back on January 6th is falling apart. They have not been able to find any instances of Trump supporters committing acts of violence. The violence was all committed by Antifa and Black Lives Matter. And but the Biden regime is still trying to use what happened January 6th to criminalize all dissent in the United States of America. This is a blatant attack on our First Amendment right to freedom of expression, our right to petition the government for redress of grievances. They want to take that away now. And we're seeing that pop up all over the world, where governments are now passing laws saying that you can't see anything insulting or negative about their politicians. I mean, the boot is coming down hard and fast, people. It's time to recognize that. Over in Minneapolis, it's just another major problem over there. There's been another shooting over the weekend involving a female police officer who shot and killed a black person. One story is that she went for her taser and grabbed her firearm by mistake. The liberals are saying this guy was shot over an air freshener in his car. Others are saying he had a loaded gun on the seat beside him. Videos have surfaced documenting that this guy was a gangbanger, and in the videos he brandishes guns. But apparently the police showed up because there was a multi-car crash that they were investigating, and somehow this turned into this ugly incident. And not Surprisingly, Black Lives Matter is out there screaming police brutality and murder, and they're vandalizing police cars. The police had to shoot one thug who was vandalizing a police car with a rubber bullet. And I mean, this is what? Just a few miles away from where George Floyd was killed, and Minneapolis is already dealing with that trial there. So it's almost like the timing is just a little too cute. So in majority black Atlanta, Georgia, police are now begging residents to stop shooting each other. Now, you know, the official media story, government-sanctioned story, is the whites are shooting all the blacks. The FBI crime statistics say it's actually the opposite. Most of these interracial crimes are committed by blacks against white, but there is a huge problem with black-on-black crime. Atlanta is acknowledging that, and they have mounted a Facebook campaign to simply say, stop shooting each other, which is a good thing. I think that's a good thing that we stop shooting each other, or that the blacks stop shooting each other. And because every time you pull that trigger, you're just giving the gun grabbers more ammunition, so to speak, to take our Second Amendment away. Getting back to the Chauvin trial, the defense has succeeded in creating more reasonable doubt with a state witness who basically said that George Floyd was in a very weakened medical system. He had 90% occlusion of all three major coronary arteries. Hypertension had enlarged his heart. He had fentanyl and methamphetamine in his system. And the adrenaline induced by Floyd's poorly made decision to fight four police officers for 10 minutes, any of those could have been the cause of Floyd's death. And all it takes is a reasonable doubt for the jury to come back with a not guilty verdict. Story coming on out of Hideout Now. The Democratic-controlled House of Representatives next Wednesday will consider a bill to study paying reparations to descendants of enslaved people, which could open the door for a vote on the issue that has gained momentum in recent years. Now, longtime listeners know I am opposed to this for several reasons. First and foremost, there are no more surviving slaves other than all of us being slaves to that 1044. And, if you can find the slave owners and take the money from them to give to the surviving slaves, that would be different. But this whole wealth redistribution scheme is all about taking money away from white people who may not have had anything to do with slavery and giving it to a whole bunch of black people who may not, in fact, have been slaves, but may be descendants of black people who came to this country after the Civil War. Now, my ancestors on my mother's side ran a station on the Underground Railroad, so we were on the other side. Do we get a discount on any of this nonsense that's coming on out? But again, this is the Democrats trying to buy the black vote at the white people's expense. Okay, a little more government lunacy. This is from Breitbart. Up in Portland, Mayor Ted Wheeler is reportedly backing down from his request that the police bureau be given $2 million in emergency funds, and instead voted with city commissioners to spend $6 million on grants to community groups and hire 24 park rangers. So the deal gives the police no money, but calls for the Portland Police Bureau to assemble a new gun violence team to replace the one eliminated last June when the city defunded the police. The group will be known as the Focus Intervention Team and have civilian oversight. It's going to be totally ineffective, I'll tell you that right now. All right, so let's get into COVID. We're getting close to a break here. This story is very alarming. It's coming on out of a finalwarning.com, and research is showing that the spike protein outer shell of the coronavirus contains prion-like regions which can be broken off by the mRNA vaccines, and these prions will attack your brain and nervous system like mad cow disease. And worse, it's going to take a while for the symptoms to show. Got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our show here, and we're talking about this study that came on out from the Human Microbiology Institute, raising the alarm that mRNA vaccines could actually break segments of the spike proteins on the coronavirus, producing prion-like regions which can attack the brain and nervous system the way mad cow disease works. And they're saying basically the folding of these proteins into their pathological prion conformations is known to cause ALS, front temporal lobar degeneration, Alzheimer's disease, and other neurological degenerative diseases. The Mayo Clinic says CJD, the disease caused by prions, is 100% fatal. There is no treatment. Some of the symptoms of CJD described by the Mayo Clinic include stroke-like symptoms, difficulty speaking, confusion, odd movements, and other symptoms include emotional changes, a sharp loss of cognitive function, and seeming personality changes. All of it, of course, ends in death. Once the symptoms show up, it's already too late. So there's a real confidence builder here. And story coming out of the Epoch Times, quoting a study from Tel Aviv University, which found that a South African variant of the COVID-19 virus seems to affect people vaccinated with the Pfizer shot more than unvaccinated people. And the study has not yet been peer-reviewed, but it indicated that this particular variant of the virus, also known as the novel coronavirus, was found 8 times more in individuals who were unvaccinated, or 5.4% against 0.7%. I think that was miswritten in the original report. But they're basically saying that this variant of the COVID virus seems to find vaccinated people much more hospitable than non-vaccinated people, and that is very worrying. Meanwhile, 12 state attorneys general, headed by New York's Letitia James, are asking Facebook and Twitter to do more to stop the spread of coronavirus vaccine skepticism. They want Facebook and Twitter to basically shut down any posts of anybody who says, I'm not sure about the vaccine. They're not even talking about whether it's misinformation or not. They're simply saying that all doubts about the vaccine must be erased because everybody must be given this vaccine, even if it's causing mad cow disease, or I guess we'd call it mad needle disease, and all of this other stuff. But they're out there pushing it here. Over in Germany, they are getting ready to reimpose their harsh lockdown measures. And after canceling Germany's draconian Easter lockdown last month, Angela Merkel took full responsibility for her misjudgment. But now it looks like her government is going back to the decision that new COVID-19 restrictions need to be put in place. Now, this next story is really going to rile you a little bit. As we reported last week, there is a volcano on the Caribbean island of St. Vincent. It has erupted. Cruise liners and ferries are rushing to the island to evacuate people caught by the eruption. But according to the Prime Minister, people are not allowed to board the evacuation vessels until they receive a COVID vaccination. So I guess the choice you have is to receive a shot for disease that you may not have, or boil to death in hot lava. A little bit of a choice here. Talk about coercive tactics here. Rapper DMX, his real name was Earl Simmons, and he passed away recently. The family says no, he was not using illegal drugs, but he did get the COVID vaccine a few days before his heart attack. Down in Brazil, they're having a major problem with what they say is COVID down there. And along with that, there is a food shortage. Millions are going hungry amid the COVID crisis. And so it's really, really rough down there. Up in Montreal, there was an anti-curfew protest turned into a riot Sunday night, in which multiple businesses were vandalized by people who are just sick and tired of the lockdowns for curfew. Turning to the international news here, the U.S. government is desperate to find a way to sell you on the idea of staying in Afghanistan. Now, we know the Pentagon has got these very expensive contracts regarding Afghanistan that go out to 2025. Well, that's their problem, frankly, because they should have had an escape clause in there in case peace broke out. Maybe they just weren't expecting peace to break out. But the latest spin that they're trying to put in to stay in Afghanistan is seen in this article from CNN, no less, saying that a U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan could risk progress on women's rights, that we have to stay in Afghanistan to protect the rights of women. I wonder how many women have been killed outright, blown to bloody bits during this war in Afghanistan. Okay, we got to take another break for commercials, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to our show here, and we're talking about this story that came out of CNN about how the United States has to stay in Afghanistan in order to protect women's rights. And it didn't really get a lot of traction. In fact, Russia Today came on back with a rebuttal saying this is an example of woke imperialism, at large. And CNN really didn't get a lot of traction. In fact, they got rather mocked on Twitter for that ridiculous point of view. And somebody just wrote me saying, how can you trust a government that can't even fix the potholes in its own country to be taking care of issues like women's rights in other countries? Getting into more serious news here, Secretary of State Blinken is basically rattling the sabers to China and Russia again. And Blinken appeared on NBC's Meet the Press with Chuck Todd. One might forgive a traveler from another land or time forming the impression that almost all U.S. television news, cable, and network alike consisted of different channels of Voice of the White House or the Pentagon broadcasting system. Well, it certainly seems like they're pushing the war agenda as hard as they can. Ukrainian President Zelensky has filed a request to speak with his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin, about the escalating conflict in eastern Ukraine. And they've made the request. They have not received an answer yet. Meanwhile, a Ukrainian soldier has been killed and another seriously wounded in an artillery strike as tensions rise and Russian troops mass on the border amid fears of an all-out war. A former U.S. ambassador is warning that Putin could spark the war in Europe by invading Ukraine. And again, this is part of that propaganda campaign. This is all going to be Russia's fault. Bad Russia, bad Russia, bad Russia. No, this all started back with the U.S.-sponsored coup d'etat that brought down the legitimate elected government of Ukraine some years ago. And everything that's happened since then, the secession of Crimea, all goes back to that. Okay. U.S. warships are going to enter the Black Sea in a significant signal to Russia. Turkey has confirmed an earlier report. The U.S. will send warships to the Black Sea as a demonstration of support to the government of Ukraine in response to claims of increased Russian military presence on Ukraine's eastern border. Meanwhile, Turkey is demanding the return of Crimea, the suppression of Donbass, and NATO membership for Ukraine. And so Turkey has come out with a document that fully backs the position of Ukraine and its backers in the United States. Down in Yemen, at least 123 people have been killed in heavy fighting over Yemen's Ma'arib. And the fighting continues to rage and even escalate in Ma'arib, a city that's been contested for months. Over the weekend, the Houthis have been trying to push into the city in an offensive on 3 different fronts. Okay, so here we go. Yemeni drones and missiles hit Aramco refineries and military sites in Saudi Arabia. Spokesman for the Yemeni Armed Forces Brigadier General Yatas Sari said that 17 drones and ballistic missiles were used in an operation against Saudi Arabia earlier today. And the refineries in Jubail and Jeddah were hit with 10 drones of Samad 3 type as part of the operation. So the fighting is continuing there. Now, there's an interesting little article. This came out of Syrian News. And it talks about how secret documents reveal the size of the American intervention in Yemen. Now, you have all been told that this was all Saudi Arabia's idea. The U.S. is supporting Saudi Arabia, but this is Saudi Arabia's war. And I have sort of held the theory from the beginning that this was, in fact, an American war using Saudi Arabia as a convenient proxy. But these documents have now come on out, and they were issued by the U.S. Embassy, and they included directives from the former ambassador, Gerald M. Fierstein, to the presidency to transfer the so-called anti-terrorism units from the Ministry of Interior Affairs to the Ministry of Defense, and to turn these units into security forces for the Yemeni land and sea borders. The documents have also directed the rapid issuance of presidential decisions to appoint a number of military commanders to various positions. All right. Over the weekend, there was an incident at the Iran nuclear facility at Natanz. They were just spinning up their brand new and improved centrifuges when they were hit with a cyber attack that caused a tremendous amount of damage and a fire. And according to this article from The Guardian, Israel is appearing to confirm claims that it was behind the cyber attack. And Tehran's nuclear chief has described it as an act of nuclear terrorism that warrants a response against the perpetrators. Now, this may be Israel trying to provoke Iran into doing something that could be used as a justification to launch a counterattack against Iran. But the apparent attack took place hours after officials at the Natanz reactor restarted the advanced centrifuges that could speed up the production of enriched uranium in what had been billed as a pivotal moment in the country's nuclear program. And Iranian authorities scrambled to deal with a large-scale blackout at Natanz, which the country's Atomic Energy Agency acknowledged had damaged the electricity grid at the site. So Iran is blaming Israel for the assault on the nuclear site. They are vowing revenge. I'm hoping the cooler heads will prevail. And the cyber assault cut off power to the site. It did not disrupt the enrichment operations, and the plant is still running on emergency backup systems, according to Iranian authorities. And Iran's foreign ministry is saying that Israel's attack on Natanz is intended to derail the sanctions talk up in Vienna. Over in the Western Pacific, China is blasting U.S. military interventions in a counter-human rights report. Now, we have seen the China-bashing propaganda pouring on out about how China is being abusive to Christians and the Uyghurs and this group and that group. And in the face of these constant attacks by U.S. officials over alleged human rights abuses, China released their own report last Friday that blasted the United States for its many military interventions that have created humanitarian disasters. The report was titled Severe Humanitarian Disasters Caused by U.S. Aggressive Wars Against Foreign Countries, and it was released by the China Society for Human Rights Studies, which falls under China's State Council Information Office. So the report said that from the end of World War II until 2001, the United States was responsible for 81% of the world's armed conflicts, and I am not at all surprised by that number. Taiwan is planning to stage live fire drills on the Dongsha Islands in the South China Sea later this month in preparation for a possible attack by mainland Chinese forces. Amid reports, the People's Liberation Army of China has sent drones to gather intelligence about the Taipei-controlled islands. Observers say the drills, along with a recent threat by Taiwan's Coast Guard to shoot down any People's Liberation drones sighted over Dongsha, are likely to increase tensions in the area. There will be 2 live fire practices, one on the 25th and the other on May 5th. And they have already sent notices to relevant agencies to alert fishermen and aircraft to stay out of the firing zones. Meanwhile, Taiwan has reported that the People's Liberation Army of China flew 25 warplanes into Taiwan's air defense identification zone earlier today, its largest incursion yet, as tension in the Taiwan Strait continues to escalate. According to Taiwan's defense ministry, the PLA warplanes, 14 Jian-16 fighter jets, 4 Jian-10s, 4 H-6K bombers, 2 Y-8 anti-submarine warfare planes, and 1 KJ-500 airborne early warning and control aircraft entered the island's southwest zone. Taiwan's Air Force sent its air patrol to shadow them, issued radio warnings, and deployed missiles to counter their movements. All it's going to take is one hothead, and the shooting will really begin. Over in Germany, and this is being fueled in part by all these lockdowns, which are starting again. The far-right Alternative for Germany party, which is the country's 3rd largest party, is saying it's time for a European Union exit. They're calling it the Dexit, and an end to the lockdown madness. And they're saying this should happen this coming September. Down in South America, tensions are rising between Venezuela and Colombia after Venezuelan Socialist Party leader Diosdado Cabello said any possible confrontation with the U.S. would take place in Colombian territory. Colombia reinforced its border, said Colombian Defense Minister Diego Molano. All right. Here a war, there a war, everywhere a war. All right, let's talk about the economy because the numbers are not good, and you don't even really need the numbers. You go around, you're seeing the prices are going up on everything: fuel, food, water, utilities. You go to shopping malls and you see how many retail vacancies there are. Claire and I, over the weekend, drove over to Evansville to visit her mother, who's at a nursing home. We took her out to lunch, and the mall where the restaurant was located, something like a 30 to 40% vacancy rate. Just, four lease, just one after the other. Meanwhile, the federal budget deficits are taking us to $30 trillion in debt and beyond, and that's not counting the unfunded mandates. And the U.S. federal debt is going to exceed the size of our entire economy even before the Biden infrastructure plan is approved. And they're warning that food, gas prices are likely to keep rising. So this might be a good time to stock up on some non-perishables just to save a few bucks down the road. Story coming on out of Zero Hedge: small business closures soar back as financial hopelessness builds. Now, I know that Biden thought sending out these stimulus checks that people were going to take it and run down to their local small businesses and spend money like there was no tomorrow. But most people are just grabbing that cash and they're hanging on to it because they don't have any confidence that things are going to get better in the future. And without that, again, they're just going to hang on to that money, or they're going to put it into storable food. And these retail small businesses are still feeling the impact during this tough economy. And I know Washington, D.C. wants to blame the pandemic for it, but this economy was already showing signs of trouble long before COVID-19 showed up. Getting back on over to Amazon and their warehouse in Alabama, the vote for unionization failed, and the younger workers said they didn't really see any benefit of a slow collective bargaining process, which was apparently what was on the line with this vote. Is if they'd voted yes, things would have stayed pretty much the same, and then somewhere down the road, maybe something would have happened, and I guess they're a little more impatient about that one. Turning to immigration and globalism, the New York Times is reporting that the Biden administration is offering federal employees paid leave to assist illegal aliens entering the United States. We reported last week how NASA had been approached if some of their employees could be spared to go down to the border and assist with the illegal immigrants. And I think they're doing this the wrong way. They should be sending these people down to the border to plug those holes in the fence and turn these people around and send them home, because we cannot afford to have this flood of illegal immigrants, either economically or politically. Up in Portland, again, Antifa terrorists blocked the doors to an immigration customs enforcement facility while federal agents were inside the building, and then they set it on fire, chanting, "Every city, every town, burn the precinct to the ground." Isn't it amazing how Antifa is still treated like they're some kind of hero by the corporate media? And certainly we're not seeing them get arrested. Oh, did you see that thing where one of the co-founders of Black Lives Matter took all that hate whitey money and bought herself a new, very plush home in an almost all-white area of the city? That's really upset a lot of people. Let's get into gun rights here. Story coming on out of Zero Hedge. Will the Supremes unleash Biden red flag gun raids? Now, there is a case already in front of the Supreme Court where the police basically went into a home on the warning of a wife who had spent the night at the hotel because she had an argument with the husband, and he had put an unloaded gun on the table and said, "Go ahead and shoot me, put me out of my misery." And the police went on in, they confiscated his guns, and he sued, saying they didn't have a warrant to do that. And so this is before the Supreme Court, and this will set the precedent whether the government does have a right to come on in and simply grab your guns without a warrant if somebody says you're a bad person. And I'm sure that there are a lot of people out there. If you look around your circle of associates and acquaintances, you're going to find one or two who really think you're a bad person and shouldn't be allowed to have guns. So you can see where this is going to wind up going. Okay. Story coming on out of Zero Hedge. Basically looking at Biden's gun control claims and saying most of them were flat out lies. The background check system has kept more than 3 million firearms out of the hands of dangerous people. Turns out most of those were false denials, and the permits were eventually issued. Others of that kind. We're going to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to our show, and I just got a thing. Yeah, we just now found out YouTube has taken down our live stream broadcast for putting out what they call inaccurate medical information, and apparently we are under a strike until July. So we're going to be looking for a new video streamer to take over. Because YouTube has become absolutely useless at this particular point here. All right, let's see. This story kind of surprised me. It's coming out of New Hampshire, which I consider myself a Granite Stater. And according to a recent investigation by the state of New Hampshire's Attorney General's office, a state-run youth detention center has been ground zero for an utterly horrifying child torture and sex abuse ring spanning the course of decades. According to officials in a recent lawsuit, hundreds of victims have come forward alleging the abuse by over 100 government employees, and multiple arrests have been made. That's a little bit sad. Okay, now last night they were supposed to try the first flight of the helicopter, the Ingenuity helicopter on Mars. We don't know exactly what happened, but now they're saying that it is, in fact, going to be on Wednesday. All right, we're going to go ahead and open up the phone lines, area code 512-248-8252, and we're going to go to Peter in Los Angeles. Hello, Peter. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. Just before I launch into this, it's kind of a big one today, but I wanted to about that sex ring. Yeah, maybe you might want to harken back to the days of Barney Frank, from former congressional head of the Finance Committee, Democrat from Boston, who ran a male prostitution, which was pedophilic as well.
Right out of Barney Frank's apartment, as I recall.
Right out of his apartment, yeah, there you go. And, of course, he went on to serve many more years remaining as the head of the Finance Committee. That just goes to show you how far back that's been. And he was running ads they found also in the paper that were saying, we're looking for friendly top or something along those lines. It was really bad. But there he survived it. He was the right religion, and he was a power broker in the finance area. So, but anyways, Mike, what I wanted to talk about was, I want to start out by saying, again, with the finance thing, and about who in my theory of things runs this country more than anybody else. And those are the people that can print money out of nothing, the Federal Reserve.
Yep.
And have never been audited in 108 years. And I want to point out that they have been. Everybody knows that their creatures, the BlackRock investment and Vanguard capital, have been buying up, printing up all the money and buying up the depressed stock market. They said, quote, to prop it up, but using all that printed money to buy up almost shares of almost every single publicly held company.
Okay, Peter, I got to put you on hold. Peter, I got to put you on hold. We got to take a break for station identification. We'll be right back. And welcome back to our show, hour number 2. The phone lines are open, area code 512-248-8252. And we were talking with Peter in Los Angeles. Peter, if you could just sort of pick up where you left off.
Well, I was speaking of how the Federal Reserve, which can print money out of nothing, has been audited in 108 years.
Yes.
Since the COVID thing shut down, has basically shut down the economy worldwide to the tune of, who knows, $100 trillion worldwide. Who knows, really? But they've been buying up, quote, to prop up the stock exchanges. They've been buying up, quote, intervening, and buying up shares of stock, which, of course, since nobody's buying anything, nobody's really making anything, nobody's really consuming what they used to, they've been buying up stocks at 40 cents, 30 cents on the dollar. And they've bought, as part of Vanguard Capital and BlackRock Capital, creatures that they own, companies the Federal Reserve owns, the shares of almost every publicly held company of any note in the United States and some around the world as well. And so there's been a massive transfer of ownership, and their portfolio of that they talk about has gone up by about 4 times what it was before. But I want to just put that as a background. About 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, I sent an article into you, and we even talked about it. And the article was, and I don't even remember who wrote it, but the top 20 donors on either party or both parties combined to the American political scene. And of those 20 top donors, and these were individual donors, by the way.
Yes.
I want to. 16 of them were Jews, and billionaires, Jewish billionaires. Of course, when you can, again, print money out of nothing, and your kinsmen control all that, never get them, then you're going to get rich at a higher rate than other groups are going to be. But at any rate, I want to point out that these were individual donors, not corporate donors, the way that since Citizens United has happened, where corporations have the rights of an individual, and now we're talking about the stock exchange and these corporations all over the country.
Yes.
That have changed ownership. Now we're talking more now about the corporate contributors beyond the top 20 individual donors, and so now they're controlling most of that as well. And it all this, hit me as I was talking, as you were talking earlier, about the 100 corporations that are against election integrity, election ID. They're coming out, against all that. And,
yes.
And by the way, Donald Trump is talking about embargoing them, about having an embargo against these companies that are now. What these are billionaires that are running everything. They have already, the elite that already run everything. They control our banks, as I said before. They control our media, part of the people who fix the election. The banks, the media, certainly. They control institutions like our intelligence community. We've talked about this. These guys want to be rich too, and they were in on the election fixing as well. And now we had Tucker Carlson, who went on and talked about, speaking of the scope of what's going on, the great replacement. And now, of course, Greenblatt of the ADL comes out and he wants to get him fired. They've already replaced. They've pretty much already replaced us as the elite, us being the old Anglo founders of the country.
Yeah.
What they can't do in the long run, they know that 1.7 or fewer of these billionaires, they can't control us just with a tiny elite with not that much almost no popular support, until they also replace us as a population too, and the divide and conquer thing that's been going on, which they've been doing with, of course, backing all this great replacement with the media and everybody else. And, of course, they own the political system, as everybody knows, as I just talked about all the political contributions and so on. It's a divide and conquer thing, and it's just only getting worse. And they know they can't remain in power as the elite unless they replace us, period, as well. Okay. And that's what I would like people to talk about here. They've been lying to us.
Well, that may be why they got so upset at Tucker Carlson the other day when on his show he was talking about replacement theory.
That's exactly right, Mike. And of course, you talked about it the other day, how the things they're saying that you can't talk about are the same reasons why they said that Israel can't take in Palestinians, because it would dilute the Jewishness of Israel, and they wouldn't be the same country. But yet they're doing that here. They're championing the policies that are doing that here, but they won't let us put a wall up here. In Israel, there are Jews-only roads and Jews-only towns and Jews-only laws. And
yes,
you can't get married. A Jew can't marry a non-Jew unless they get special dispensation. Did you know that? They can't marry a non-Jew. And so imagine if that happened in the United States. If somebody said, "Oh, you can't get married or whatever unless you marry another white person or another black person or other, whatever." Can you imagine? And yet they're doing this to us with the wall that they won't let us have. They've made us build for them, and we can't even build one here at our own expense. And all this other stuff that's going on, and it's right in our face. And they've weaponized the races. They've they clearly, by lying about the crime numbers that you talked about earlier, without a doubt, they've been lying about that for 50 years and portraying it on television and in the movies, and CNN and MSNBC and all the mainstream media, which they control. Their whole narrative is that that it's just the opposite. It's just flipped on what it really is, in that blacks greatly outnumber black on white and black on everybody crime. Outnumbers just about everybody else outnumber everybody else put together. And yet we're not told that, and they're not even told that. But they're saying that we are, because we are the new villains, and they're trying to replace us. They're trying to get us out of the way. The only people that can really stand in their way in the United States, because we're 60% of the population, we're relatively well educated with relatively high disposable income still, and they can't have that around and control all our elite institutions and have a bloc like that as a possible rival. And anyways, that's my thing, Mike. I'm sorry I took way longer than I normally do, but it's a really important topic, and we got to do something about this, because there's nothing left for us except to oppose this.
No, I'm absolutely in agreement, and thank you for the phone call. We're going to go to Bruce in Texas. Hello, Bruce. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, well, the last caller took up a lot of time, but I appreciate that, because you pretty much made my argument, or my point about financial institutions, or actually the string pullers. You can have the CIA, but it's actually the investor class combined with the financial media and the hedge funds that are leading these corporations to follow their political agenda. That's very clear. I heard a podcast by someone who knows about all this, and I can't remember exactly who it was, because I listened to so many, but he made that point, and he made it eloquently. And this has actually been going on since World War II, leading Washington, and we had the illusion that we elect our politicians and have control over the political process. They're just tying up loose ends now, and it's very concerning. I don't know. How do you get rid of Wall Street, or how do you clean it up? I don't know.
I think Wall Street is going to destroy itself in the very, very near future.
Well, I don't know. Let's hope so. I mean, but we'll go down in the process too. The whole economy, the whole country.
Yes.
Look how they blackmailed Congress into the bailouts in 2009. That was a pretty clear indication of the political power they have through the Federal Reserve and through the Secretary of Treasury on down the line. But yeah, since that point has been made, I've tried on several different message boards that have like Black Lives Matter there and Antifa. I would volunteer myself. I don't weigh nearly as much as George Floyd, but I would volunteer myself for, say, if I survive $10,000, that little amount, for someone of that police officer size to kneel in my neck for 10 minutes. I mean, this is a death-defying stunt, isn't it? I mean, because he killed George Floyd with his knee. So I would volunteer to lay face down on the pavement with my, and have a cop kneel in my neck for 10 minutes, or my shoulder, on the back of the neck. See what happens? You and I know what's going to happen. Nothing. I could probably smile and laugh through the whole thing. It's just such a clown show. It just boggles my mind that so many people buy into that. Oh God! And they're gonna sentence that guy just like they did the guy in Charlottesville who was running from the rioters. And he accidentally hit some people. It's a circus, man. I don't know what else to say. That's all I had for today, here.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the phone call. And our phone lines are open, area code 512-248-8252. And we're going to go to Laura in Michigan. Hello, Laura. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
A couple of articles. One of them is, last week you said that United Airlines was going to hire just women and blacks for pilots. Well,
50%.
I'll tell you right now, 50%, yeah. Well, I'll tell you right now, if I get on the plane and I see a female pilot and co-pilot, I'm getting off. Do you remember this?
Now, hang on a second.
Wait,
hang
let
on
me
a second. There are some very good female pilots. Let's not forget Amelia Earhart, not ignoring that last adventure she had on there. I think the issue was that American Airlines was focused more on filling out a scorecard of gender and ethnic group rather than on simply finding the most qualified people that were out there, which could include women, probably does include women. And, I've been on commercial flights with female pilots, and I didn't have an issue with them.
Yeah. Well, also I wanted to comment, that ship that was blocking the Suez Canal?
Yes.
Did you know that they were bragging that was going to be the first woman to navigate the Suez Canal? And look what happened. Ship was across the Suez Canal and blocked it. That was the first woman. So there you go. Remember a couple of years ago, that engineering firm, they bragged was all women, the first engineering firm?
I remember that one, and then they collapsed that walkway.
I'm sorry, I'm just not seeing a lot of accomplishments of women. I'm sorry, I'm just not. And I can say it because I'm a woman,
Well, it was Marie Curie, and, Albert Einstein's wife certainly contributed there. But I think this idea of pushing women ahead can backfire. And I remember a while back, the U.S. Navy made a big deal out of the fact that they had qualified a female F-14 Tomcat pilot who promptly on her carrier calls slammed the plane into the rear of the ship, killing her reel.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Also, I want to comment on, they're never going to get out of Afghanistan. They're not going to leave those thousands of acres of poppies.
No, they're not.
Too lucrative. That's what it's all about. It's not women's rights. It's the poppies,
Yes.
Yeah, so then the last thing I was going to mention is Tom from Florida got called out by another RBN host. Tom kept saying he's a Jew for Jesus. He's not Jew at all. He just, I don't know what, he's got some kind of delusional psychosis or something. But he's not a Jew. So I don't know why he keeps saying that. He's lying. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that up because another host called him out on it.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the phone call, and we're going to let you go. The phone lines are now completely open. Area code 512-248-8252. Let's get some more news in there while waiting for some more callers. And we have been hearing for a while about this chip shortage, and I'm not exactly sure why we're seeing this and why some really smart, wealthy investor like Elon Musk isn't seeing this as an opportunity to invest in chip manufacturing plants. But we're seeing this interesting story come on out of Zero Hedge about how the semiconductor chip shortage is now affecting a range of other products other than the auto industry. And they're saying right now network routers are back ordered for an entire year due to the chip shortages. And I don't know, I'm kind of wondering, it almost feels like this is deliberate because, without those chips, our society can't function anymore. All righty. Story coming on out of Investment Watch blog. China is dangerously close to the U.S. in the artificial intelligence race, according to the Department of Defense artificial intelligence chief. And this is a beg for more money, of course. China and Japan and a lot of these other countries are way ahead of us because, they've lured away some of our best talent already. All right, we're going to take another phone call. This one from Kelly in Austin. Hello, Kelly. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Okay, I heard that last caller's comment about women in the cockpit, and while on one level I agree with her, on the other hand, I disagree. It depends on how she gets there. Did she get there on her own merits, or she put there because they were trying to fulfill some kind of diversity?
That's exactly the point I was trying to make.
Right. Now, in my career, I have been privileged to work with a number of very professional female geologists and engineers. And in fact, I think that the best engineering manager I ever worked with is a woman. But she is there because she earned it. My daughter has earned her PhD in engineering. Wherever she goes, she's going to get there because she earned it. I don't think she wants anybody to hand something to her. Not long before I decided to go back to work for myself, the company I had been working for as a senior consultant decided that, well, we need to have more women in management positions.
Yes.
And they made a big deal out of it. And I pointed out that, I said, look, if there's a problem there, don't point to me. I mean, I'm only mid-level here. I mean, I'm a senior consultant, but I have no managerial authority. I was a hitman.
Okay.
You're the mobber. All right. But I didn't promote people. I said, if there's a problem, it's the people in the home office who are responsible for that. Don't make a big deal. Don't make a big deal out of that. And I accused them of trying to shoot for quotas. Oh, they denied that. But in a big company-wide meeting, somebody pressed the woman who was in charge of that. She said, well, if we have to consider quotas, we will. And people looked around the table at me and shook their heads. Boy, you were right about that one. It's this fascination with just filling quotas, having women and other minorities in certain positions just because of diversity is not going to do anybody any good. Now, the women I knew in that company, the engineers and the geologists, I know to a woman told me they would resent being put in a position solely because of their chromosomal makeup.
Yeah.
They wanted if they were going to be promoted, they wanted to be promoted because they wanted to be respected for their talents as engineers and geologists.
Okay, Kelly, I got to put you on hold. Don't hang up. I'm going to come right back to you after these words from our sponsors. Kelly, I'm in agreement with you. I know a lot of people who don't want to be promoted because they happen to fit a required ethnic or gender or orientation category. It sort of subtracts from what they've accomplished on their own merits. And this applies not just to women, but to a lot of black people who do not like affirmative action. Because people will see black people in very good positions in life, and they say, you just got him because of the quota system, and they don't like that. It's sort of undermining and cheapening what these individuals have accomplished.
That's right. And frankly, I think that disincentivizes people to do their best.
It does. We're already seeing that in our educational system.
Well, certainly, yeah. Hey, look where that is. But it would really be an incentive to leave and start your own company in that case.
Yes.
If I were the CEO of a company, and people came to me telling me that we need to diversify, my first response would be my first responsibility as CEO of this corporation is to the shareholders, not to people who are pushing, not to people who are pushing politically correct agenda. And if you don't like that, leave the company. Period. Because we're here to make money, and we're going to do it. And we're going to do it with the best people possible in the positions. I don't care what their color is. But they have to be good at what they do. Period. But there's this notion that diversity is a virtue in and of itself, and this is something that we should really shoot for. Well, frankly, I think in the long run that might end up backfiring on companies like United. You might end up finding that you're putting the wrong people in the cockpit just to fulfill some kind of diversity
yes.
goal. This will ultimately, I think, backfire on these people. An unrelated question here. I heard you say some time ago, I think, did you have a telescope?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. What kind do you have?
I have a Celestron 8.
Okay. Yeah. I just bought a Celestron 137.
Okay.
It has an automatic star finder, and today I just got delivered a Jumel 130. I'm getting that set up. We have nice clear skies here at this time of year, and I'm looking forward to seeing what I can find. My question is, how often do you find that you had to collimate your scope?
You mean optically collimated? Not very.
Yeah.
I haven't had any problem with either this one or the one I had before on Oahu.
Okay, I wondered about that because I saw some mention about collimating ever so often. And well, if they're in alignment, why would you want to do that? So.
Well, I don't have a lot of experience with the 130. It may be that it has a different setup and so forth. But I've had a Celestron, the little tiny 80. I've got a Celestron 5 that's never given me any grief, and I've had 2 Celestron 8s now.
Yeah. Do you do any astrophotography with your telescopes?
Oh yeah.
Okay. How far out do you get? I mean, can you get out into the outer reaches of the solar system with that? Can you see?
I've seen all the planets except Pluto, which some people say isn't a planet any longer. Mostly, though, I focus on the deep sky objects like the Andromeda Galaxy and the Orion Nebula, and of course, I go, shooting pictures of the comets every time they whiz through.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to seeing what I can pick up with these larger diameter scopes here. At 130 and at 137, I think we'll get a lot of light.
Yes,
and it should allow me to get out into the deep sky as well. But I'm really curious. I want to see how I can photograph the planets to start off with, and then I'll try for the deeper.
Okay, well, you can get an adapter ring. To just mount your camera directly onto the telescope like it's a telephoto lens, and just use the internal clock drive to track the object. Now, if you don't have a polar mount, you can still do long-duration exposures around the outer edge. There'll be a little circular distortion, but, at the center, it'll still be pretty good. You can go for a 2-minute exposure there.
Have you had a chance to set yours up in Indiana yet?
I only one time. I need a concrete platform to put it on, and but I have had it set up once, and it really did very well.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing what mine does here. I've been wanting to do this for a long time, and I said, well, what the hell? So I just pulled the trigger.
Well, it's funny. During the pandemic, telescope sales have really gone through the roof. As people are being forced to stay at home, and TV is really not very entertaining anymore because it's gone to such propaganda. And so, people are buying astronomical telescopes, and they're taking a peek at the sky. And there's a lot going on this month that people might want to be taking a look at.
Yeah. Well, it's good to know that people are getting away from television. I haven't watched television in months. I'll pick up some things occasionally on the computer, but I don't watch television now. I've stopped watching television.
Yeah, I don't watch that much anymore either, and it's kind of frustrating. Anyway, listen, Kelly, I need to let you go. We're going to take a break for commercials. We have more callers waiting on the line. Some lines are open. 512-248-8252. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our show here. We have open phone lines, area code 512-248-8252, and we're going to go to Pat in Fort Worth. Hello, Pat. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oops, a lot of things. I was thinking about one thing when Laura got on the phone, and I said, I'm going to agree with that. That's what I told Mike I was going to say. But remember the teacher who went up in the spacecraft and it turned into a Y in the sky?
You mean Christy McAuliffe?
Yeah. I said, she tried to tell women that it'd be better to be up there like that, risking her life, instead of teaching these poor little kids.
Well, space travel is risky. Everybody knew that. I mean, one of the other women on that flight, Judy Resnick, I'd actually worked with her just 3 months before the flight down in Houston. And again, obviously very competent, very proud of what she was doing. Didn't get her position by being a woman. In fact, NASA had a long history of bias against women in space flight, going all the way back to John Glenn. There was actually an Astronet program back in the Mercury days, and it was killed. And John Glenn used to joke about it. It's 90 pounds of recreational equipment. So.
Well, let me tell you. Now, one of the problems was the O-rings and the tiles falling out. A woman was responsible for gluing those tiles down, right? Or caused it to blow up.
No, it was a lot of different people, but in the case of Challenger, it was the frozen O-rings, and the Morton Thiokol engineers sounded a warning because of the freezing temperatures on the day of the launch, and NASA management chose to ignore them.
I know, but maybe that was another time when the tiles came off.
You're thinking Columbia.
Okay.
Well, actually,
anyway,
the tiles all along. It was an issue.
Okay. Well, I really wanted to say something else, but I didn't know if I could get on saying it. What I'm concerned about is a border right now. And about 3 weeks ago, I'm getting them mixed up which one it was. I think it was Tucker Carlson's show. And he had a fellow down on the border in a small town down there, and he was talking about how they're actually cartels are having war down there. Did you see that?
Yes.
Well, I don't know how many people did because I don't get to hear everything, what people, I just get interested in something that had to do with our sheriff here, and our sheriff was right because he does when he stops people, he asks them about their citizenship. Well, he got targeted. He got targeted, and because of what Trump was doing up there with the wall and everything, and our leftist liberal newspaper here reported it all wrong. But thank God, it did make national news, so we could go back and hear exactly what he said instead of what the newspaper printed, and had everybody. There's 308 nationalities a year. That was several years ago. They go over that border right now. And nobody can take offense at anything. Well, we're coming after our race. It's a racist thing, and blah, 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 But what happened, I suggest people go back and look at that YouTube with Tucker Carlson interviewing, I forgot his name, see, down on the border, because he actually they videoed it. And you can hear all the sounds. And he said they have tanks. They have two of those cartels down there actually in 48 to 54 countries. Yes. So what does Joe Biden want? The UN on the border? You know what? I don't trust the UN anywhere around our kids. They have a reputation for molesting kids all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
So, who's going to take care of it if the state that's having the problem with it can't do it? It's been talk on the last show, I think, on today. But I'm just saying that people ought to look at that and see and hear it and believe that it's not just a bunch of little kids, needing. I know the preachers want to help them, and help the churches that are helping them down there. I'm all for that. Just get the kids away from the gangs, the members that molest them. And Trump did that. He was a wicked old man, keeping them away from the older kids who were raping them. And thank you for letting me rant. Thank you.
Not a problem. And we're going to switch over to Terry in California. Hello, Terry. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, Peter does a good job of pointing out who controls a lot of things in this country. Yes. And I have two Jewish son-in-laws that I'm proud of, and I wouldn't want to have any other son-in-laws. But I think the Jewish people are brainwashed more than we are. Because they have these camps when they're growing up in Israel and all that kind of stuff.
The kibbutz.
But I think the real target should be the people, the traitors that receive the corruption that go along to let them do what they do. The Gentiles that let them in and bend the rules for them that if they wouldn't do for anybody else. And they do it, and they receive corruption, and they're victims of blackmail as well. And one of the things that, we talked about before is this dual citizenship thing. That's got to stop. I mean,
I agree.
It won't, but it shouldn't have started in the beginning, because I think there was a law against that. I mean, if you left the U.S., you had to give up your citizenship. And I remember Elizabeth Taylor did it for tax reasons, I think. She became evil because of that. But she didn't have the opportunity to go on to be a dual citizen. But there was, I think, a case where somebody gave up his citizenship. He's a Jewish guy, went to Israel. Then he wanted to come back and get it back. And they didn't give it to him, so he went to the Supreme Court, and the Jewish judge on the Supreme Court, I think it was a woman, gave it to him, said he can't be denied his true citizenship. So, I think what we got to do is expose the traitors that may be receptive to graft and corruption and all this sort of thing, and instead of the group that's trying to come in, we need to expose other things too. Like, you'd be surprised how many people never heard of the USS Liberty, and nothing has ever been done to make them pay restitution or anything for that.
They were supposed to pay restitution to the families of the sailors, and they never did.
And it's the most decorated ship ever in the history of naval combat. And
but it was also an embarrassment. I mean, they gave the commander of the ship the Congressional Medal of Honor. It was the only Medal of Honor ever issued that wasn't pinned on him by the president at the White House. They did it in like the local Navy Yard.
Exactly. I was going to mention that.
Yeah.
But, part of the problem is APEC is a organization sponsoring a foreign government. And that used to be illegal. But they used to have to register anyway to identify themselves. And I think the Kennedy administration kept writing them letters saying, you need to come in and do this. And they just didn't respond to it, and they delayed dragged their feet and all this. And then we know what happened there. It ran into November 1963, and the problem for them was taken care of. And, of course, the one that got Bobby Kennedy, of course he was a Palestinian, and it goes along with some of the CIA weapons that they have to. None of these people that commit these crimes have any recollection of it. They're all in a brainwashed stupor. They just don't know what they were doing. They don't know why. And
one of the witnesses to the Bobby Kennedy assassination saw Sirhan being led around by this girl in a polka dot dress, and said that Sirhan just looked like he was totally zoned out and not even aware of where he was. And then, of course, the police denied there was a girl in a polka dot dress.
Yeah, and wasn't there somebody behind Bobby that he was a security guard, had a gun, a massive caliber that went through the back of his head. And it wasn't even a clear shot from Sirhan. There's a guy that's been in prison for the last, how many years? 40-something years? Yeah. Maybe more. And so, we're in denial. This whole country's in denial what's going on. Yes. And, my opinion of it is that the Zionists want to have a world Zionist government. They want to be in charge. Yes. They care less about the United States of America. They gave them the opportunity. And they're taking our tax resources, they're taking our military, and taking over the world. They're going to the Middle East, and who pays the bill for that? You and I do. Of course, they don't. Yes. And then it's, we buy these things. We buy this story, agendas, and all this. And, of course, 9/11 was a big farce. We don't want to go into that now, but I spent all my career as an airline pilot. I know exactly that all that's impossible. I got so many arguments for it that, there's an organization called, of course, you know about the Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth that I support.
Absolutely.
And also, there's an organization, Pilots for 9/11 Truth as well. I happened to be on my retirement trip when that happened, being a captain of a 747 coming out of Tokyo going to Chicago, and we made it as far as Canada, and it's a good thing when they were open. But but there's so many points that to us it's just laughable, and other people buy it.
I agree. Listen, Terry, I got to let you go.
Yeah. Sure.
We're running out of time. We got callers waiting on the line, and we're going to switch over to Al in Canada. Hello, Al. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. How you doing?
Doing all right.
I joined late here today. I noticed that your YouTube feed has been cut off.
Yeah, YouTube has pulled the plug on us.
Well, I can't say I'm surprised.
No, me neither.
Yeah, they're fascist. Anyway, I sent you a couple of emails there.
Yes, I saw them.
One of them. Yeah, so I can't remember which one I sent first. So the death rate, and of course it has nothing to do with there's no COVID in there, right?
Right.
And there's another. The third one I sent you apparently that has COVID involved, so the death rate did tick up a little bit after
that's
dropping.
Because I'm only seeing 2 emails from you.
Oh, because I did send a third one, and it shows that I think basically that the death rate has ticked up by 1. Probably for all the countries around the world, and I think since I'm not looking at it right now, but I think since 2017, the death rate has climbed up a little bit. It's been climbing a little bit, but before that, it was dropping. It was dropping quick. So, it's just something to look at. Another thing was that email, a supposed leaked email from the Liberal Party here up in Canada.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it's true or not, but, who knows what these people are up to. We haven't had a budget up here in 2 years. We're supposed to hear about something in another month. And I'm sure that the $500 billion that they created at the Bank of Canada out of thin air won't be accounted for because, this government up here is it's like the United States government on steroids.
Yes.
There's no accountability. There's just scandal after scandal, right? There's just the sad thing is, Mike, we're at the point now where I think it's hopeless because they're all a bunch of dithering fools. They're uneducated. They're ill-equipped for their jobs. I've said this before. It's just disgusting. You know what, Mike? At least your country has some of the best politicians money can buy.
Yeah, but unfortunately, it's not our money they're taking.
Yeah, I know. It kind of is. I mean, it's kind of making its way around the world, right? Seeing as you still have the world's reserve currency, which
but not for much longer.
It's looking kind of dismal, especially with Biden's. He keeps wanting to throw trillions out there.
Yeah.
On their little pet projects. Like what's going on with this? What happened with that one? Just like in the last couple of days, where they wanted to give blacks reparations.
Yeah, they're voting. They're looking at that one right now. It's just another way of using the white people's money to buy the black vote. Yeah,
exactly. That's exactly what they're doing. And you've covered all that sort of thing before, even. With all these states changing their voting laws, and they're all saying racist, Jim Crow, and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But what they're really saying is that they think that minorities are too stupid to go out and get ID.
Yeah, they've actually come out and actually said that blacks can't find the DMV, they can't fill out the paperwork, which is an extraordinarily racist position for them to be taking.
Oh yeah, anybody that can't see that. Wow. They've obviously got some heavy-duty blinders that I would love to have. That's all I have, Mike. I know you got some other callers. Anyways, Thanks a lot for your time. Have a good one.
All right, you got it. And we're going to go to Dustin in New Jersey. But, Dustin, I'm going to have to take you through the commercial break. Let's get started. What's on your mind?
Mike, I'm going to move topics because probably getting tired. I want to talk about ray tracing.
Yes.
Mike, do you know ray tracing can also do audio? I didn't know that. You can also do ray tracing for audio work now.
Yes.
Where you can do positional audio. I think that's amazing. You look back on the ray tracing.
You can recreate some of the world's great acoustic spaces and then sort of play your source into it and get the ambient tone, the reverb from those places. Anyway, Dustin, stay on the line. We're going to come right back. And welcome back to our show here. We're talking with Dustin in New Jersey. And by the way, Dustin, I've gotten a few emails saying they're glad that you're back. So why don't you just sort of pick up where you left off?
Well, you know what? We're always hearing about politics, but, we got to hear about technological things, guys, and like ray tracing. And Mike, what's your take on ray tracing now? It's in games and like you can use it for audio. Just all the,
Well, ray tracing is compute intensive, and a lot of what is in the games is being done with what are called environmental maps. And that is something that really came out of Pixar, which for the longest time, the RenderMan rendering engine didn't even support true ray tracing. Everything was done with environment maps.
Mike, I know we don't have too much time left. I'd like to talk to you for an hour, but I can't. But you ever heard of hidden surface removal, which is tile-based rendering, right?
Yes.
That was back, did computer graphics use that tile-based rendering?
Oh, yeah, it was a way of reducing the data set.
Yeah.
Because if you are actually ray tracing, you're always, or even just with a scanline algorithm, you're having to find where the scan line intersects the geometry, and if there are hidden surfaces in that database, it still has to test them to see if they're visible or not. But if they can be removed ahead of time, it cuts your rendering time down. Rendering time is the big cost of computer animation.
Unless you have a 64-core, 128-thread processor, right?
Well, when I worked at Square USA, we had our own rendering farm, that took up an entire floor of that building.
And real quick, Mike, you heard of Studio Ghibli, right? That's the Japanese Disney, right?
Yes.
Yeah, they did oh my God, I can't remember, Howl's Moving Castle. And movies like that, Ponyo. You heard of Ponyo, right?
No, I can't say that I have, but then I don't watch a lot of movies anymore.
Animated. Spirited Away. Spirited Away was one of them. So, Mike, have a good show. Have a good night. I'll call back tomorrow.
All right, thanks a lot. And we're going to squeeze Mitchell in Memphis into the show. Mitchell, not much time. What's on your mind?
Not how much time to have a minute?
Yep.
I can't do it. Anyway, Mike, let me ask you. Nobody gets along. Everybody's arguing and fighting.
Yes.
We don't have continuity of understanding. Excuse me, I've got a cold. No one agrees on anything. So it seems like people need to separate. Now, let me ask you something. Do you think that, I've got here, Alaska is composed of 424 million acres.
Yes.
Should anybody be able to go and stand there and not be able to not pay property tax? Should I be able to carve a little area of Alaska, 424.5 million acres, and be able to homestead and not pay property taxes? Yes or no, Mike Rivero?
I do not know. It would certainly be nice. We know a lot of people are out there homesteading
next question.
In Alaska.
But
I think it's up to the Alaska government. I don't think there are property taxes there because of the revenues generated from the oil companies.
When I checked, there are property taxes all over the United States of America. Would you sign a petition to that saying that every state we're going to carve out X amount of acres for an arbitrary amount for a free state zone? We're going to call this the new Plymouth Rock movement, Plymouth Rock 2.0.
Okay.
Would you sign that petition?
Unfortunately, Mitchell, I got to let you go. The music is playing. The show is over. Everybody stay tuned for John Stedmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. Please spread the word of Republic Broadcasting. Spread the word of whatreallyhappened.com. Please donate. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.